starting.
There it is.
The Hangout on air is live. So now let's go to the chat room and just make sure that people are seeing this.
And say, hey, am I on TV? Am I on TV?
Look, Mom. Okay, so hold on. Let's just see if anybody is.
I'm on the news.
Oh, I see it right here. Okay.
Oh, yeah. By the way, don't watch. Yeah, make sure that video and audio, is because you're going to get the lag if you don't turn the audio off on the actual one.
Okay, now all that I want to do is see some of the chat from time to time without seeing my face.
All you have to do is pause the video on YouTube, and then the chat will keep going. And if you want, you could even, there's a button in the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of the chat. You can say pop out chat. And if you pop out chat, you can even close the window at that point because chat will be in its own separate thing. But that's totally up to you.
I'm not even going to get involved in the chat on this. I'm just going to make sure that the chat is live. Okay, so let's just see. I'm going to ask, can everyone see us?
And hear us.
And hear us. And when we have a yes to this question, hello.
It'll take a second or two because it's delayed on their side.
We got Natalie Buzaglu, a Russian name that I can't read. Hamilton.
Oh, that's one of the Russian agents that follows me. No, I'm not kidding. Not kidding. She's a female from Belarus. Absolutely Russian agent.
Okay, wait, we're getting ahead of ourselves already. Okay. Do I want to see the chat? I don't think I do. No, you know what? I need to see the chat. Okay. So let's get going. We're going to go live. We're live, and I'm going to lay out the ground rules and explain to everybody what's going on because Mark and I have had 2 discussions, and I want everyone to know what we discussed because this is uncharted territory for me. I told Mark that I'm going to ask him questions the way I would ask anybody in sort of, let's call it cross-examination, except we're not trying to prove a case here. I'm just trying to get some satisfactory answers to questions that I have, to understand how someone like Mark believes what Mark believes.
Sure.
Vis-a-vis the shape of the Earth.
Sure.
So we've had 2 discussions. I didn't want to get any advanced answers to the questions, and I didn't want Mark to know the questions I'm going to ask just so that it's fresh and new for all of us.
That's true. And I can actually state for the record that I have not received any questions from you, and you were really good about and I knew what you were doing. It's like, let's not waste any of this. Let's just do it like first impressions. I
want it to be new to me, and I want everyone also to know that there's nothing rehearsed. There's going to be nothing edited about it, and that's why we're doing it live so that there will be no doubts as to what's going on. And Mark, if I ask you anything that is off limits, I mean, I'm not going to press you, but I'm going to ask the question just because I want to know.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Personally. Okay, and everyone's going to ask questions it can ask questions. I've got Ian Corzine. If anybody doesn't know him, he's another YouTube lawyer who does actually very, very branded, dedicated legal stuff on YouTube. He's moderating, so he has my text number. He's going to text me any questions I don't get to, but I'll be reading the chat as much as I can without getting too distracted.
You know, it's not often that there's actually a lawyer moderating a chat. That's got to spook some people.
We've got a lawyer conducting the chat and a lawyer moderating the chat.
Exactly.
YouTube law.
Don't make any mistakes, trolls.
Okay, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
Let's get the elephant out of the room, or at least address the elephant right away. Mark, serious question, no jokes, no judgment. What shape is the Earth?
The Earth is absolutely positively 100%. Put it in a certificate you can frame flat. In fact, it's not just flat. It is enclosed. I should specify that. Meaning we are in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling, and it gets a little more complicated from that. But the simple answer is you are in a flat world that's enclosed.
Okay, and now when you say flat, you mean actually flat with no curvature whatsoever?
No curvature whatsoever. Of course, there's mountains, there's valleys and stuff like that. For no different than, let's say, a record. That this dates me, of course. A record on a record player. The record is not perfectly smooth. There's all sorts of divots in there. High and low peaks on a vinyl record. But from one tip to the other tip, it's absolutely level.
Okay, now we've got that done. We're going to come back to that, people. So don't anyone start smashing your computer screen. To the beginning, Mark. Right. How many siblings do you have? One sibling, and your parents?
Parents divorced back in the 80s. Father lives in, I don't know where my father is. I haven't spoken to my father in a long, long time. Mother lives up on the island.
And now, are you Canadian? Are you born in Canada?
No, no, but it's interesting you would mention that because I spent a year I lived a year in Canada just in 2017.
Oh, okay, well, hold on. And another preface here. I did minimal research for this live stream, not because I want to remain ignorant or be ignorant, because I don't want to be influenced in terms of what you're going to say, what I'm going to ask.
Okay.
And my research actually was limited to Logan Paul's 1 hour mockumentary.
Oh God.
Which we will get to.
Oh.
So you're American.
Yes, I'm American, born and raised in Seattle, Washington. Born in Seattle, and then was raised, if anyone knows the northwest of the country, just south of the San Juan Islands on an island called Whidbey, Whidbey.
And were your parents religious, or did you have any sort of religious upbringing?
Yes, my family was religious. My mom more than my dad, but church was definitely not just a Sunday thing. Very strong evangelical Christian. So went to youth group and vacation Bible school and Camp Malibu, but then fell away from that as soon as I left the island. It was a very sheltered place to grow up. I didn't even know there were other religions, honestly, until I left.
And for the overt ignorant, your religion, your specific, call it subcategory within the religion?
Evangelical Protestant born again.
Okay.
Is there...
And so you're brought up with strict religious
not strict, but very enthusiastic. The high school, it was very much the clique to be in high school, because once you got a certain number of people in a clique, it became cool, and so there was a very strong church clique that belonged to this one particular church, and there was a lot of kids involved in it.
Okay, now I'm just going to bring this up so I can see a little bit more of the chat, so I can know.
Oh, that's fine.
What people are thinking here. Okay, that's going to be too distracting. Now, okay, so look, this is the question. Have you always thought the Earth was flat, or did you at some point think it was round and then come back to thinking it was flat?
First off, since we're going to do that legal thing, the flat Earth community actually doesn't even use the word round anymore. We use ball, sphere, globe, because round, technically your dinner plate is round. Your dining room table is round. Round could be 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. But to your question, no, are you kidding? I never thought the Earth was flat. I thought the flat Earth was a terrible, awful, horrible thing, and everybody does. Nobody gets into flat Earth thinking it's a great idea. Everybody hates it. And everybody gets into the t-shirt reads literally, I got into flat Earth because I tried to disprove it. Everyone tries. It's like the La Brea tar pits. You look at it, it's like cake. I can totally shut this thing down in a weekend. And then 2 weeks later, you're not sleeping. You're calling in sick for work. You're watching videos going, okay, why can't I prove this anymore? So no, I did not even look at flat Earth. Didn't even glance at it until 2014.
All right, and now going before 2014, education. Yes. Previous jobs.
Got it. Education. Went to a little varied. Drank my freshman year of university away. By the way, I use the word university because outside the United States, college and university are completely different things. And I knew this from living in Canada for a year. College is a technical college outside of the United States, and university is university. But in America, college and university, exactly the same thing. So I drank my first year of university and then went to another university later and studied. Remember, this is back in the late 80s. So tech was very, very limited. Business administration, and then thrown out my junior year for manufacturing explosives on campus.
Okay, well, actually, we should bring it back so you can see my face. I couldn't. Mark, in some ways, you and I have similar student histories. I'm joking. I had a sort of a tumultuous high school life, but I went to 3 high schools in 5 years.
Oh wow!
Never manufactured explosives, but I had my
fireworks. That's officially the term is fireworks because there's a lot of Native American reservations up here, and they need supply. And I was always good at chemistry, so thank God I didn't get into meth, right? And so I made fireworks, and eventually I got caught. But luckily for me, it was in the 80s, or officially it was in the early 90s when the whole indictment thing went down. And so the penalties were very, very modest. So it was okay.
Never, I mean, not that it changes anything for anything, but you never went to jail for that. It was just
nope. Probation, community service, that sort of thing, which got me into computers because since there was a lot of teachers in my family, I grew up in a teacher's lounge, basically. I got to teach. You can do community. A lot of people don't know this. You can do community service at schools if they allow you to do it. Of course, most of them would never allow you in there. But since I knew all the teachers that were in these schools, I was like, oh yeah. So I became a teacher's aide for the computer science department. And that's how I got into computers.
And then you did what in computers for how long?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I did that until the service was over. And then because it was the island and you can do just about anything you want, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was a sous chef for 3 years at a Greek restaurant. And then while I was doing that, I was still doing computer stuff. And I played this computer game tournament, this worldwide tournament from a publisher. The developer was in Japan and the publisher was in Boulder, Colorado. And I won it in 94. And part of the prize was to test out some of their new games. Not much of a prize, in my opinion. But I tested it and hated it and wrote this scathing review and pointed out all these problems that were in the game. They said, you know what, you should hire this guy. So I ended up going out to Boulder, Colorado and playing video games for a living for several years until that. Most of the time, if you're going to play video games, it would be Southern California, Northern California. But I played it in Colorado. And then when that company eventually folded, I jumped over. Boulder was a great time for startup companies in tech and ended up teaching proprietary software for the better part of 20 years. So that's what I did over there. I just literally stayed in Boulder, never got married, never had kids, and just traveled around the country and taught people in blue collar factories complicated software. I boiled it down.
For one and the same company, or sort of independent various
half and half. One, it was all time and attendance companies, which was weird because there were only a handful of time and attendance timekeeping software. So when you punch in something, if you have to swipe a badge at a door with a time clock, there's only a handful of companies in the country that do that, and 2 of them were in Boulder, which was weird. So I worked for one and then ended up jumping over to another one, and that's what I did for the most part.
Okay, and now, if anyone's asking, like when we conduct examinations, we would like to know a little bit about the history of the person,
sure.
And so that anybody who wants to either attribute more credit or discredit him can, know a bit of the historical upbringing and as to how that person got to where they are.
Right.
When was your when was your aha moment where you said you started looking into it and determined or decided that the Earth was flat?
Okay, so because I was in the tech, and if you're older, and I'm older, if you're in the tech industry long enough, you were there when the internet was first starting out, and so anyone that's been in the internet long enough knows there's rabbit holes everywhere. There's conspiracy stuff all over the internet, and I'd gone through them all. So the running joke in the commercial was I finished the internet several times over because the internet just wasn't that big, and I had an opinion on just about every conspiracy. And in 2014, it wasn't even on my bucket list. It was just one of those things. I looked at it. It was recommended to me on YouTube, this little thing about flat Earth by a guy in Germany, and I thought, yeah, you know what? At least I can say I did it. I'll just look at it. I'll stomp on it. It'll be done. It'll go in my list of terrible conspiracies that I don't believe in, like Elvis is still alive and stuff like that, or Elvis had Bigfoot's baby. And then I realized there were every time I thought I had it nailed down, there always seemed to be this loose thread. There were all these loose ends everywhere, and I was going, why can't I close the book on this thing? Until 9 months later, I'm beating my head on my keyboard, and at the beginning of 2015, I said, you know what? I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say, I believe it's flat. I'm going to basically put a series of videos out to the internet hive mind, because the internet hive mind is very, very smart, and said, okay, I'm going to shut this thing down, but I need help. Tell me where I went wrong. I think it's flat because tell me how I went wrong. And I put the videos out there in rapid succession. First time I ever did any video editing. I narrated for the first time in my life. It was very an inspired Jerry Maguire moment. And then all of a sudden, and I thought seriously some academic was going to call me up and shut it down, but the opposite happened, where people were calling me from all walks of life, subject matter experts and people that want to interview me and just general population. And they were all saying the same thing. It's like, you know what, you may be onto something. So that was 4 years ago. Here we are now talking about it.
Now, this is the one piece of information that I did incidentally get out of you when we were discussing, but you're doing this full time now. If I lived long enough to write an autobiography, it would be called Unsolicited, because everything came at me without me having to lift a finger. That was the weird part, where other than making the initial clues, everybody that contacted me regarding financial opportunities, they just, slowly but surely, and when, if you believe in fate or how the world works or how the universe works, when I needed it.
And so all of a sudden, immediately, a little radio show called me up, a little conspiracy radio network. Said, "Hey, how would you like to do?" They heard me being interviewed on something, and they said, "How would you like to do your own show?" I mean, no, I mean, completely out of the blue. I said, I mean, they want an answer like right then and there. I'm going, okay, and what are you going to call it? I go, "Oh, Strange World." So we did that, and then a publisher out of London called me and say, "Hey, how would you like to turn your clues into a book?" I go, "Do I have to do anything?" "Nope. You just send us the transcripts. We'll take care of the rest." And they did, literally, illustrations, the whole 9 yards. I just signed off on it. And then Google, out of all things, they contacted me directly. I mean, anyone knows if you're in YouTube, you're going to get solicited by different networks inside of YouTube, you know, because there's different groups. It's like, "Oh, we'll help you promote your channel. Just sign your life away." But Google contacted me directly and said, "You know what? You might want to start monetizing your channel." And I'm going, "Okay," because I hadn't for like the first 6 months. And in fact, I made, even to this day, everything I have is Creative Commons license, if it's possible, if there's not like music or something in it that I use. And so between all those things and little events that I go to, or public speaking things, it actually pays the bills.
And now, because what you've probably heard it all, and it's for right or for wrong, you've probably been called either, well, and some people are going to say the same thing. You've been called either crazy, delusional, or opportunistic.
Right.
And I'm not trying to put you in that corner, but people are going to say if you're making a living now off of promoting this theory and you're not one of the first two, then you're probably the third. So I mean, for my own benefit, you monetize your channel. You presumably get paid for your speaking appearances at the Flat Earth conference.
A little bit, yeah.
You have I saw on IMDb you had a few documentaries or some videos in your
No. IMDb is weird. If you have people that listen to you, they can go into IMDb, and I don't know exactly the rules around that, and they could post things on your behalf. It's sort of like if all of a sudden there was a wiki page created by you. I mean, sometimes you would do it. I don't know if you have a wiki page, by the way.
Not yet.
Right, that's right. But sometimes people will do it for you. If you're popular enough, someone will get inspired and they will just go in and just start tacking stuff on to you. And then it'll say, "Well, you need more." It'll say, "We need clarification," and stuff like that. But no, in fact, the documentary Behind the Curve, which I don't know if you did see that, right?
I saw the Netflix one, which was either the Netflix was Behind the Curve.
Yeah, and Behind the Curve. So that one, I mean, I've never made a dime off of any. In fact, documentaries, the subjects don't make money. That's the whole point of a documentary. Otherwise, they'd just be actors, and it would be a movie. But no, they approached me. I signed my life away right away because in most cases, look, you got to understand the odds of a film even making it to Netflix are so unbelievably small. That everyone in Flat Earth is just basically saying yes to everything because why wouldn't we? It's like the odds are that it's not going to get finished anyway. So when they made it, a perfect example would be the film festival schedule last year. There were 3,000 films submitted to the Toronto Film Festival. Out of those, they chose 100, and we were one of those. And out of those, even fewer number get picked up by iTunes and Amazon and stuff like that. And so and even the people that made the film, they're like, it's going to take forever if it sells at all. It sold them almost immediately.
Well, I mean, this is a trending topic. Conspiracy theories are trending in general. This one in particular, because of call this one more polarizing, and most people don't consider it to be as serious a conspiracy as other conspiracies that are out there.
Right.
But you do merchandise this, you sell shirts and things like that, I imagine.
No. In fact, I didn't realize that the t-shirts, I know there's a lot of YouTube channels that do merch. It's like, oh yeah, they do a brand name, like, Logan Paul and just about every channel that has over 1 or 2 million subs has some sort of merch thing. There's t-shirts that are sold, but not by me. I mean, oh no, don't get me wrong. There's tons of Flat Earth t-shirts that are sold out there. But it's really a loose organization of people. Yeah, in fact, there's one. There's a guy that helps me produce Strange World, where his daughter is actually doing a t-shirt shop, and it's like, okay, sure, great, fantastic, have fun with it. I'm not going to make a dime off of it. What I try to tell people is, look, I don't want to be famous or rich. I just want to be right. If there's money in it, hey, great, fantastic. I'm not going to go looking for it. Because right now, I honestly believe that whatever's meant to be is meant to be. And so far, that's been true. I mean, everybody that's reached out for an interview, everybody that's contacted me as a subject matter expert, they've just contacted me. It's like, great, fantastic, but I'm not going to turn them down. I mean, yeah, there's some obvious scammers and stuff like that, but I try to weed those out if I can.
Okay, well, I mean, look, now if anyone's going to discredit you for, let's call it living off of the subject that's out there, and now we're going to move to the actual subject, guys. And it's a fair criticism because.
Oh yeah, but look, what am I supposed to do? Like, for example, I'm looking at the conference schedule this year. I mean, there's no way I could do a normal gig and do this conference schedule. I'm going to be in New Zealand. I mean, there's a New Zealand conference in April, a Calgary one in May, Stockholm September, UK September, Mount Shasta September, Amsterdam, and we finish out the year in Dallas. How in the world would I be able to do anything like that? I mean, yeah, and of course, they're going to pay for plane tickets and hotel, and if they want to throw something at me, great, fantastic. But they asked me to come, and look, I'm just going with this wave wherever it's taken me.
Okay, well, let's get into it now because I think that's I don't need to know any more financial details. But
okay, no, that's fine. No, it's good. I'm glad you asked.
People are going to want to know, and they'll draw their own conclusions.
Right.
You have your one most damning or most convincing piece of evidence to submit to someone who thinks you're nuts. I mean, right. What is your number one argument for why the Earth is flat?
The number one argument that I would, in fact, it wasn't even my argument. It was just something that came out of, because when I did the clues, there was no math or anything like that. But sorry, short answer would be long distance photography, more than anything. Which is if you go to people and you say, how can you prove to me the globe without using the space program? Throw out the space programs. And they say, why do I have to throw out the space programs? I go, well, obviously, it's not like NASA created the globe in 1972. It's not like we woke up, because that was when the first blue marble shot was taken, right? And so it's not like you woke up one day in 1972 and said, oh, look at that, it is a globe. Whew, glad that's over with. So if you throw out the space programs, most people will say ships going over the horizon, right? That's like the number one answer outside of NASA, which is ships going over the horizon. I go, yeah, 10 years ago, I would have been right there with you because I was one of you, which is why I can't get mad at anyone that comes at me, by the way. I can't get upset because I was you. I was absolutely, in fact, I was one of the few people, there's no one in the flat earth community that did what I did. One of my hobbies, collecting, I'm older, I collected knickknacks. I used to collect antique globes. Literally, I had world maps all over the place. And I joked, it's like to remind me in case I get hit on the head, where I am, type of thing. And then when I got into this, I had to get rid of them all. So ships going over the horizon. 10 years ago, yep, you're an absolute. The camera technology we had, you could zoom in. Well, we'll use VHS technology or Super 8 or whatever they had. Zooming in, boat is gone. Then HD came out. And HD changed the game to where now that boat is gone, supposedly gone over the horizon. Remember, the curvature of the Earth, if you believe in mainstream science, we didn't make this up, is 8 inches per mile. Not trying to scare anybody here with math, squared. That's it. And it's weird when you say this, and this freaks people out, because if you say 8 inches per mile, and they're going totally with you, totally 8 inches per mile, I got that, squared. They forget everything they ever knew about junior high algebra. They just freaks them out. They're like, I have no idea what that means. I'm going, it's 8 inches per mile, which means every mile times itself times 8 inches. So if it's 3 miles, it's 3 times 3 is 9, times 8 is 72 inches, about 6 feet. 10 miles is 10 times 10, which is 100 times 8 is 800 inches. It gets steep. It gets worse and worse and worse because remember, if it's a ball, it's going to go vertical eventually. So what's my point? My point is, eventually, a boat is going to go off in the distance so far. It doesn't even have to be a boat. It can be a lighthouse. It could be a body, a landmass on the other side. Eventually, you're going to there's going to be something off in the distance that's going to be on the other side of the curve, behind the curve. You can't. It's gone forever. It's on the other side of the hill, and yet everybody, for whatever reason, again, I'm just totally tickled that everyone did this, ran down to the beaches all over the place with HD cameras and cranked up the zoom, and they could now see objects that were far, far beyond the visual range. Should have been gone forever. And they're there. The boat now, the boat's gone. You let it go off in the distance, you crank it up, hey, the boat's back in frame. Let it go off again, crank it up, hey, the boat's back in frame again. Well, it's like, okay, how far can that boat go off before someone's saying, well, it's impossible. You can't see that boat anymore. You can't see that lighthouse. And that's probably the most, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that is the most compelling thing that people run into, because it's easy to do. You can do it anywhere. And it happens in every kind of weather condition. So like, for example, real quick, Chicago skyline, which is a great one that people use, 50 miles across Lake Michigan, right? 50 miles, which is about 1,600, 1,700 feet of curvature. Well, Chicago is not that high, 1,700 feet. It's not even close. And you can see all the buildings. And you can see that in any weather condition, any light condition. We've got time lapse. It's not snapshots. It's time lapse. There's no inferior mirage or superior mirage. There's nothing inverted. It's always there. In fact, the challenge that I'm rambling.
No,
the challenge that
so it came back to my face here.
the challenge that I put out to anyone in science is find me an object at less than 150 miles, give or take, that we can't see. That you say, no matter what you do, you will never see that lighthouse over there because it's behind the curve. We always see it. In fact, my last qualifier here, the only reason we can't see, people say, well, if that's the case, why can't you see Japan from San Francisco or Europe from New York and stuff like that? I'm going, well, that because you're looking basically through something that's only 99% transparent. Remember, what we're breathing in here is mostly transparent. It's like a thin version of water, though. It gets thicker and thicker and thicker as it compounds over time. So if you took out the atmosphere, I bet you could. I bet you could see it. In fact, when you look at planes, I got to stop. When you get planes up at 30,000 feet, you can and turn on like an infrared filter on it. You can see distances that are ridiculously far, even at 30,000 feet. Even when you take into account the 30,000 feet, you can see hundreds and hundreds of miles. You should not be able to see them. Go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt because I just saw one of Judith Scott's comments, which was you can see the buildings but not their bases, which actually brings back something that I did here.
Right.
Without getting into I read somewhere that this famous calculation of 8 by 8 by 3 was somewhat of an oversimplification of the math, and
it is, but under 500 miles, you're absolutely right, because because it's a slope, it gets weirder. You're right. There's no way it would ever be 8 inches per mile perfectly throughout the entire globe. But less than 500 miles, 8 inches per mile squared is absolutely fine. You can do that. It works like a charm.
Okay, and setting that aside, because one tactic that people often use, it seems like it's a magician's tactic, is they'll use a formula that is too complicated for people who don't know to contradict, and then sort of, not bombard them, but rather sort of intimidate them with the calculation. Right. But getting to the basics of what you're saying is that you think something, you can always see something and it doesn't actually go beyond the curve. But I mean, look, what are you going to say? Because I've seen this particular picture is the boat where you can see the cargo, but not the hull, because it's beyond the curve.
Right. And the same with the building, by the way. Most of that, and again, we did not make this stuff up. We had to, trust me, we looked into it as well, which was what something is called atmospheric lensing. Remember what I said earlier, whereas we're looking through sort of a thin version of water. So if water is H2O, we are breathing in, again, the average person doesn't even know this, we're breathing N4O, which is, again, throws people for a loop. It's like, we're not breathing in oxygen. Oh, yeah, but only about 20% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen. So when you're looking off into the distance, that thin version of water is acting like a lens, actually literally acting like a magnifying lens. And if you do a magnifying lens, look it up if you get a chance. It actually will cut off the bottom and start magnifying stuff towards the top. But it absolutely does work that way. But again, the bigger point is, why can you see the object at all? I know people are stuck on that, where it's like, well, yeah, you get the chopped, the chopped bottom. It's like, no. How can you see it at all? We're talking about 1,700 feet of curvature. I don't care if, you say, oh, we're missing 200 feet at the bottom or whatever, which again, atmospheric lensing. How can they get stuck on that? It's like, how can you see any of it? It's gone. It should be absolutely gone. And then they say, well, it's refraction.
No, I don't think that's the explanation. I think part of the explanation is it depends on the height of the viewing point to the object.
I know. But look, the time lapse that was taken at the beach a couple of years ago, again, not by one of us, by one of mainstream media guys. He was 6 feet off the beach, not high at all. Trust me when I say this. Yes, I know we're fully aware of the elevation formula, but that's why most of our guys get down at beach level. Absolutely beach level. In fact, there was a wonderful test. If you want to look up something, and I know it's tough because there's so much content out there. Look up Flat Earth 7.53 frozen. That's about the only way you're going to find it with a Boolean string, because there's just so many videos out there. And that was a husband and wife team went to a frozen lake. He put the camera, the tripod, literally on the ice, and she put a flashlight, not even a laser, put the flashlight, one of those square boxy flashlights, literally on the ice, 7.53 miles. Perfect. She had a cell phone. He had a cell phone. They're talking to each other. He's got the whole thing. And his camera is literally, I think, 1.5 feet off the ice. Both were perfect. How would you explain that?
Well, I might, and I only saw this link because someone posted it in the comment, but I might counter that with the National Geographic one of the guy who.
Oh my God! All right. I was there. Okay, National Geographic. Oh, okay, I don't want to drag the National Geographic too much because they had me come down for this thing. We shot for 3 days, and here's the part that most people don't even know. We have this documented all over YouTube, and that was that for 3 days they shot it, and they didn't release it until a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. It took them months to release it. The guy with the raft with the stripes, there was in the raft. That was their backup experiment. The main experiment, which they completely edited out, was the balloons at 10 miles away on the other side of the lake, where most people, they're rookies when they get into this. You got to realize that something that's 10 miles away is really, really, really small. And if you don't have any identifying landmarks, you can't find it. And we could find it. They couldn't even figure out where the balloons were. What they were going to do was raise them. And then we were going to, say, okay, you can see them. But they said, well, you won't be able to see it on the beach because it's on the other side of the curve. Well, there's a problem there. And that is, how do you know where to look if you don't know, if you don't have anything markers? We found it with our P900s. We found it almost immediately. We said, look, there it is. And they were on the radio. We got them on the radio. We're saying, no, they can't see it. It's like, no, what are you talking about? We can see it. It's right there. That segment turned out so badly, they just erased it from the thing. And all they had was the stupid raft going out at 3 miles, which was absolutely silly. They didn't even show the calculations. They showed no graphics exactly how far that thing was. Plus, you could see the shoreline behind them and the entire boat. Don't get me started with National Geographic.
Well, no, it's not a question of getting you started with National Geographic. It's just a question of getting you started with the fact that certain things are not observable beyond the curve. As you say, your explanation for that is going to be
atmospheric lensing.
Atmospheric lensing.
Or atmospheric distortion, Fata Morgana. Take your pick. They're all basically the same thing.
Okay. Now, and I believe there's a counter to that, but at the very least...
that's fine.
No. And the thing is this. The purpose is not for me to like catch you in a spot.
No, it's okay.
Because I'll tell you, I don't think I will ever do it. I don't think anyone's going to ever do it. But at least anybody who says, what's the explanation? Atmospheric lensing, and now people can go and verify whether or not that has any scientific base or whether or not it's been...
it wasn't us. There was the reason why we even knew about atmospheric lensing was we were giving some Chicago news team grief because there was a weatherman that came on there and said, oh, this is a mirage. And it was a still shot of Chicago and it was brilliant. He goes, yeah, that's not actually Chicago. You're looking at a mirage. And we're going, wow, that's one of the most clear HD mirages I've ever seen. And then he had to go to some university and he had to drag some scientists into this. And the scientists said, oh, well, it's atmospheric lensing. And we're going, well, but you're not hurting us. You're helping us in this case because you're just saying, okay, here's why the bottom 200 feet is chopped off. But the bigger point isn't the chopping off of the bottom. The bigger point is, which is I know why we'll call them globalists, why globalists get stuck on it. But
no, I didn't object to the term globalist, but I just for anybody watching, Mark, I'll tell you, you've created not a vicious circle, but something of a Zenonian paradox where you're saying it should never get cut off. When it does get cut off, it's because of atmospheric lensing. And when I can't see it anymore, it's because of the 99% clarity. So you've set a premise that you can never be disproven on.
Kind of. But you worded it a little different than I would.
No, because you said...
I'm not saying that it never would be cut off. I'm saying it shouldn't be there, period.
No. What you said was because of the curve... Oh, sorry, let me rephrase. You said the only reason we can't see Japan is because air is only 99% clear.
Right.
Now you're saying that the only reason why the base of the boat is cut off is because of atmospheric lensing.
Yes.
You created premises where you can never be disproven. Because when that boat goes over the horizon and I no longer see it, it's because air is not 100% clear. And when the bottom is cut off, it's because of atmospheric lensing. And when I see it, it's because the Earth is flat. No one can ever prove you wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
No one can. I'm sorry. I've been doing this for 4 years. Nobody. And by the way, I got to bring up something to you that you brought up earlier because it didn't bug me, but I liked it, which was you got to understand that the whole thing with math, because we do not try to throw out complex math at all. We try to stay as minimal as possible. In fact, even in the clues, I didn't even know what the curvature of the Earth was when I made the clues. The 8 inches per mile squared. The problem is that most scientists, we'll call them globalists, most globalists, when they come at us, will come at us with every form of math ever. It's like they come at us with geometry and trig and calculus and quantum mechanics. Take your pick, right? The problem is that the average person on the street doesn't even know basic algebra. And if they don't know that, and which is why I've told them time and time, look, math will not save you in this argument. It will not, because if you're talking any sort of geometry or higher, or even advanced algebra or higher to the average person on the street, you might as well be playing a recording of a modem handshake. They're not hearing it. They just absolutely glaze over. It's like, okay, because people, sorry, not to drag out the point. You may appreciate this. Sun Tzu, Art of War. People are like water. They always take the path of least resistance. Yeah. Which is the short version of saying people are lazy.
Well, no, it might be the short version of saying that you don't ask the layperson to do the lawyer's job. There are people with expertise, and you don't ask the layperson to understand the Constitution. That's why you have lawyers. Don't ask the layperson to understand complex scientific spatial math. That's what you have the experts for.
Ooh, yeah, which also helps us, because up until recently, I don't know how it happened exactly when science kind of jumped the rails and became scientism, when they put their stamp on something, men in the white coats, it was like, we are right. The most arrogant line I ever heard was Neil deGrasse Tyson when he said, "Science is right whether or not you believe in it." That's like, ooh, that's a slippery slope, because if you want to tell me what the boiling temperature of water is at sea level, fine, I can test that. You want to tell me what the core of the Earth looks like? No. Supposedly the core of the Earth is 4,000 miles down. Deepest hole ever drilled by the Germans and the Soviets, 8 miles.
Okay, this would be, Mark, this would be the moment in the examination where we're not going to complicate the discussion with other issues, because this is my...
Oh, no, that's fine.
But we can get back to it later. But my fundamental issue with some of this is that, from what I've seen, flat Earth theorists are confounding a lot of other, say, quasi-legitimate conspiracy theories to justify their own legitimacy of this particular theory, which a lot of people just consider untenable, and sort of like confounding all of these things to justify one belief, which is something that people do to themselves to justify to themselves what they want to believe, is by confusing the issue. But we'll summarize one thing, and then we're going to move on.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Ultimately, very important. The number one element that you have to confirm that the Earth is flat, in fact, is sort of not a catch-22, but like a vicious circle where nobody can ever use it. Nobody can ever prove that the Earth is not flat by your number one piece of evidence, because the argument goes, I can see the boat in the distance because the Earth is flat. When I lose the bottom, it's because of spherical lensing, and when I lose the entire ship, it's because of atmospheric dirt.
Distortion, yeah.
So your number one piece is circular, or just I guess it's a truism, or not a truism. It's a circular or vicious circle sort of argumentation that no one can ever disprove, because you have
we've got the option,
but you have an excuse for the answer. So we would have to go into outer space in order to actually see the temperature.
Okay, let's do what my close second favorite then, if you don't mind. Let's do this one, because you will probably say the same thing about this one, which is gravity versus the vacuum of space.
Okay.
Law of thermodynamics. Pressure needs a container. Plain and simple. Can of hairspray is a hard container. Basketball, soft container, or I should say flexible container, which goes rigid once pressure is applied. And we're talking about not that much pressure difference between the inside of a basketball and the outside of a basketball. In fact, if you put a basketball in a vacuum chamber, it's going to detonate, along with most things you put in a vacuum chamber, unless it's a really hard container. So there's only two objects that have ever violated this law of thermodynamics. One is the globe, which is the globe doesn't have a container. So if we've got this wispy, loose atmosphere, nitrogen and oxygen and fluorocarbons and helium and hydrogen, all that stuff. In fact, helium and hydrogen rise to the top. Where is the bleeding edge of our atmosphere to the vacuum of space?
Well, hold on, because that's not actually, I don't think that's scientifically accurate. Helium rises not to the top. A balloon will not go into outer space. It will rise to the point where the air or whatever is above it is denser than the helium in the balloon. Okay.
So again, where is the bleeding edge of our atmosphere, and why? So
I got to cut you, and not to cut you off, because I sort of, the first thing you said was the vacuum, which again is sort of a scientific term, kind of like like constructive dismissal pitched to a non-lawyer. A vacuum pitched to a non-scientist would imply something sucking the air out, a la Spaceballs. But while a space is a vacuum, it's not a vacuum because something's sucking. It's a vacuum because it's devoid of matter.
Because devoid of matter, yes.
And the scientific explanation for why things stick to the Earth, despite the suction, is specifically because of gravity.
Exactly.
Okay, so
but that's the only explanation. In fact, it's that I throw back on science, which they say, well, it's got to be gravity because we're still alive. That's the only explanation. I'm going, so gravity is so strong that it can fight the massive vacuum power of space.
But it's not a vacuum power of space. That I think is misusing words. It's a devoid of matter. It's not vacuum. And the reason why matter, I'm not a scientist. I read a bunch of, I used to be into black holes in the universe when I was in CEGEP, which is like after high school, before university. But the reason why the reason why anything attracts to any mass is because of gravity. The bigger the matter, the stronger the pull. And space itself is not a vacuum that sucks stuff off. It's just an absence of matter.
Oh, I know. Let's not. I'm using the word "suck" just for the layman out there. Pressure equalization, molecules versus no molecules, and when that happens, molecules versus no molecules. If there is no barrier there, it will equalize. Plain and simple. And it's a question that science will not answer, which is where is the bleeding edge of our atmosphere? Pressure needs a container. I don't know how many times I can say this.
Well, no, because it's you're. I think I would think that the scientist is going to say it's not pressure. The phenomenon on Earth is not pressure, and so you're setting up a false premise.
It's called atmospheric pressure. It's
created by gravitational pull, which pulls everything into the Earth.
Again,
from the Earth, the weaker the gravitational force. I don't know what you mean by bleeding edge.
Okay. All right. And I don't want to. I'm trying not to lose your audience.
No,
as the atmosphere gets as the atmosphere gets thinner, as we know, we go higher up. You go to a mountain, there's less oxygen, and it gets higher and higher, and there's less atmosphere. The lighter gases are when you get higher and higher, right? So what we're saying is that pressure needs a container, and that gravity isn't nearly strong enough to keep this here, to keep the atmosphere here. And science says, well, it has to be, because again, we're still alive, and saying they can't be. That's the only option you have. It can't be that we're in a building, and that the reason why you have atmospheric pressure is because you're in a pressurized system, literally a pressurized system with walls and a floor and a ceiling. That's what we're saying when we're talking about. Sorry, I'm trying to form some different thoughts here, which I hadn't thought about before. We're talking about the vacuum of space. Or just a vacuum anyway. I talked to industrial vacuum experts when they were making and it's very, very tough to do down here, when they're making clean chambers for electronics, for example. And they say, you have no idea what a true vacuum is. It's kind of like a true eclipse. When you get at 90%, you're at nothing. He goes, just to make a vacuum down here, he goes, you need 3 engines. The first engine gets you to about 95%. Then you need a monstrous engine to get you to 99%. He goes, to make a 100% vacuum, we can't even do it physically. He goes, there is not enough horsepower in this world to do it. He goes, you cannot do it. You have to use a chemical leaching process just to get that last trace amount to create a 100% vacuum container. He goes, when we're talking about the vacuum of space, the pressure differential is so massive. He goes, the atmosphere should not be there. He goes, the ISS, for example, would just explode. He goes, we're talking about aluminum and plastic. It's not steel. It's aluminum and plastic. He goes, that thing would rupture in 2 seconds. So why doesn't it?
But okay, so someone is going to tell you should not ask the plumber to.
Plumber?
No. I mean, we're saying this not to be demeaning, but everyone has their expertise. You should not be asking a plumber to interpret the Constitution, and you should not be asking a lawyer to fix your drains.
So when I have people that call me up, engineers that say, look, it does. We're not talking about the 9/11 engineers. Well, that's a whole other thing. We're talking about engineers that specialize in this. In fact, let's throw one more out there, because I know you probably hadn't watched this.
No, don't throw one more out until we resolve this one. I think some people might say that a building engineer who's talking about creating a vacuum on Earth is not necessarily an astrophysicist who understands what the vacuum of space is, because I suspect they are two entirely different things. And so talking about a vacuum to create a vacuum on Earth under our atmospheric pressure on
okay.
our
But I got an argument for you. Okay. So let's say you have there's another floor above your house, and I don't care if there is right now. Let's say the second floor of your house right now, you turned into a vacuum chamber right now. So where there's devoid of molecules above you right now. You punch a hole in your ceiling. What do you think is going to happen? Well, of course, you know what's going to happen.
Well, I'm telling you, this is what I think results from creating I'll call it a false analogy between creating a vacuum on Earth and the vacuum of space. The vacuum of space, I mean, look, this will be where people are going to go look up the difference between the vacuum of space and why it's different than creating a vacuum on Earth.
There is no difference. There is no difference. It's a vacuum. That's all there is. If you have a second floor of your house, you punch a hole in the ceiling to the vacuum chamber above you. Why doesn't the gravity keep the air with you right now? Why don't you die?
That'll be a differential of pressure within a gravitational system within the atmosphere.
You're in the same gravity.
The void,
same gravity.
But I think the mistake, and again, people draw their own conclusions. I think the mistake is probably referring to the void of space as a vacuum in the same sense as creating a vacuum within certain atmospheric pressure. I'll understand the way you think and the conclusions you're drawing by virtue of this false analogy of if I put my vacuum cleaner to my belly, it's going to suck my skin, and that must be how space works. But I suspect that people with the actual technical training would be able to explain why that is.
So you're deferring to the men in the lab coats.
Well, no, I'm referring to the fact that
No. This is where we run into our problem, which is you're saying the astrophysicists know more than we do, therefore they are correct. Astrophysicists cannot be wrong.
No.
Cannot be wrong. When they come up with stuff like dark matter.
No, Mark, you see, this is where you're going. You're throwing in something else. We don't need to go to an imperfect analogy from a perfect example. I know what is required to create a vacuum on Earth. We had those little bell things in high school where you sucked out and you didn't hear the bell ringing anymore. That I don't think is a fair analogy to what the void of space is like in terms of the vacuum, the difference in pressure versus outer space. It doesn't function in the same way, and I can understand why you would come to these conclusions thinking it does.
How do you know it doesn't function the same way?
Well, the reason why I know it doesn't function the same at the very least is because we are on Earth.
There you go. And we're still alive. There's the argument.
No, we're still alive. We're still alive. And I know what involved in creating a vacuum. Do I even know that there's a vacuum in outer space? I mean, this is where you get into the whole argument. I've never seen it. I haven't been there, so I can't know it myself. For all value I got out of Logan Paul's documentary, he says, I've never seen my brain, but I know it's there. But I don't know if he said brain, actually.
Which is a terrible argument. The man, by the way, is a buffoon. He's one of the worst human beings ever. And this is not being slanderous. He is horrible. He's an 8th grade kid who got paid to do pranks, and he's 24 now, and he's terrible. I mean, you know what he's famous for?
I want to get to this, but we'll close out the vacuum theory.
All right. Well, no, wait. Let's not close out the vacuum. Let me do one more thing, which is because I made a clue on this, which was okay, fine. If you want to back the ISS, you want to back that we're still alive, breathing. Which is, there's a question I'm dying to ask an astronaut, which is, how does an astronaut suit work? I'm not talking about the oxygen or heating and cooling or humidity or that stuff. I'm saying, how does an astronaut suit stop the vacuum of space? What miracle technology stops the law of thermodynamics? And you're going to eventually say, well, layers. I'm going, no. My winter coat has layers. All it does is stop the cold. Tell me how an astronaut suit doesn't blow up like a parade float, like the kid from Christmas Story. I can't put my arms down. And he just can't move because it is rigid at that point. How does it not happen?
I don't know if this is called, so I saw the word in the comment section, gaslighting. I don't know if this is called gaslighting, but all I know is that this is confounding something that might be difficult to explain to justify a belief that might be itself untenable. So it's not because I can't explain that the Earth becomes flat. And now
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that proves the Earth is flat, but I'm saying that at the very least, if the astronaut suit cannot function the way it's advertised, then every mission that ever showed that astronaut suit is a lie. And if everyone that showed it's a lie, well, then we got a big problem with space.
Well, but I can even grant you that, but none of this is going to support the idea that the Earth is flat because if it weren't, the atmosphere would be getting sucked up into outer space, because I think that's just
I know, I love that argument, which is, again, and this is the scientific argument, which is I figured you would follow anyway, which is we're alive because gravity is holding down the atmosphere, and that's the only explanation. Case closed. That's it.
I mean, we're alive. We have an atmosphere. I don't think the atmosphere is necessarily created by gravity, as far as I understand, because other planets have gravity but no atmosphere. There's a number of other things that create the atmosphere. So I don't even think that having the atmosphere. I mean, Mark, the moon is not being pulled apart despite not having an atmosphere. Forget about oxygen.
It's gonna get worse now, because what moon are you talking about?
Well, so this is what I need to get to. But first of all, one person has had an answer the question. I've been seeing it. Milan. The flat Earth map is the azimuthal
equidistant
of the spherical Earth, but that's all it is, a projection. Ask Mark this question, because I've seen it a few times. I want to not forget it.
Oh, what was the question? Yeah, no, it is a projection. Absolutely. Why do we use it? No, the flat earthers will be first one to tell you there's probably something wrong with that map, but it's the only map we got at the moment, because it's what's.
Let me hypothesize as to what might be wrong with that map.
Right.
Do you agree, or do you concede, or how do you explain, if I get in a ship and go east in as much as possible, at some point I'm going to get back to my starting position?
Oh, come on, that's easy. You know that one. Which is, if I move my finger in a circular motion around a dinner plate, technically I've circumnavigated the dinner plate. That doesn't make the dinner plate a ball.
No, but you can do it if you do it in two directions. It certainly makes it more three-dimensional than a dinner plate.
If you go the other way, sure. If you're going pole to pole, find me the pole to pole circumnavigation that supposedly happens never.
Well, it wouldn't. I'll go one step further. It doesn't have to be pole to pole. It doesn't have to be along the. What's the word? Is it the radius or the diameter? Pi times the circumference.
Circumference.
Whatever. It doesn't have to. You don't. I'd say if you don't even have to go over the same nano line or across the Earth, if you do it in at least off angle from the original line, that'll give you an indication that it's not a dinner plate we're talking about anymore.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But in our case, it works pretty good, because again, the compass is at the center, which the North Pole. So the compass would work actually pretty much the same. Yeah, you would be making a very slight left-hand turn or a very slight right-hand turn, but still works. You'd never notice it.
Well, again, it's because the premise, the way you set it up, is such that if you go around that particular thing, that's how you circumnavigate that particular issue. But if you go around, let's just say a few degrees up, you're going to go up on one side of it and then down on the other side, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with something that's thicker than dinner plates. Okay, so hold on a second. I'll get this question here, Jared. Why are certain star constellations only visible from certain points on Earth? What stars are visible changing depending on where you are on the planet?
That's easy. And I know we're going to start delving into stuff that other people won't like, including some of the flat Earth community. And that is multiple projections. And by that, I mean the stars are instanced. You're talking about when you go to a planetarium, you only see one projection. I know I'm old because I go to planetariums. You see the constellations. But if you were in a planetarium that was 100 miles wide, you would have multiple projections. And what I'm saying here is, if you had a planetarium that was big, you were at one end, your friend's at the other end, you're talking on cell phones, you're saying, hey, I'm looking at the belt of Orion. He says, hey, I'm looking at the belt of Orion too. That middle star is blue. You say, no, it's not, it's red. Who's right? You're both right. It's because you're seeing separate projections. That's how we do it in software. We've been doing it for 20 years.
Okay, but hold on. What do you mean by a projection?
Meaning, again, I don't like using these terms, because unless you've done software development, you're not going to get it. Meaning it's instance. You're looking at lights on a ceiling. And if you're in a structure that's big enough, the lights are going to be exclusive to a region. For lack of a better term. So you're going to see, the belt of Orion projection from the north, or the inner circle, and a belt of Orion projection from the south. And so doing the star constellations, why can't you see the same constellations on the outer rim? It's because you're on the outer rim. Well, it's not hard.
Hold on a second. I mean, we'll get to the rim part actually in a bit, obviously, because people are dying to know. But
right.
You're referring to north and south.
There's really no north and south on the flat Earth map. The A map, if it's flat, you've got the center, and then you've got the outer ring. Center would be the north, because remember, where's north, south, and east and west on a flat map? All you've got is a center, which I suppose you would call magnetic north, but that's just the only term we've got, because it's what we've known for so long.
Okay, I'm just reading some of the questions as we go through this, but
That's fine.
So you're seeing different angles of you're seeing different projections.
Yes.
So when the people in the south see a totally different constellation system than the people in the north,
Yes.
it's a different projection.
Yep.
But we can both agree on that. It is a different projection because they'll argue, people who believe the Earth is round, they're a different projection because it's a different object. I mean, the idea you're saying it's a different projection of the same object. I'm just seeing it differently because of where I am on the Earth.
Or you could, or you could do it completely. I was using the Belt of Orion just as an example, but if you want to do the southern constellations on the outer rim, fine, and the northern constellations in the inner circle, fine. Either way, it works out the same. Again, so what we do.
It works out the same. It's the exact same argument, or I'm not sure logical fallacy is the right term. It's the exact same argument as with the first piece of evidence, which is the boat over the horizon.
It can't be beaten.
I can never disprove this because ultimately we agree on the terms. You're just saying it's a different projection of the same thing. They just look different, and we're saying it's a different projection because they're different things.
Yes.
And because I can't go to them to actually take a piece of matter out of one versus the other, we can't prove it.
Is part of the genius of this place. You got to remember that before, and I know some people are going to argue this, for the longest time, every culture believed that the world was flat. You want to count? Don't count the Greeks. I don't even want to get into the Greeks.
No, everyone thought the Earth was flat,
but everyone thought the Earth was flat. I'm saying that at some point, whoever built this place introduced the globe, and I said this in the clue, it's very specific about it, where I said introduce the globe model because eventually, when you reach a certain technological level, human beings hate confinement, and they're going to look for it. The genius of this was telling people there is no fence, there is no outer marker. You can go around all you want. You're not getting off of it. And the globe was there. And even though, remember, we were teaching people about the globe for at least 5 centuries without any concrete proof of the globe except for math. That was it. You know what they say? Sticks and shadows. The sticks and shadows argument. Boats go over the horizon.
Math is a pretty good. Math is sometimes pretty difficult to argue with. It's like
can be, but come on. Even the best mathematicians are going to tell you sometimes you need the physical proof, which is until you get high enough to see the world as it really is. What do you really know?
Well, Mark, this is a perfect segue. You watched the guy jumping off the
Felix Baumgartner.
Yeah, you watched him.
The Red Bull jump.
Sorry?
The Red Bull jump.
Yeah, the Red Bull jump. I was going to actually, that was my cue to have a Red Bull, but my wife said not to have a Red Bull while I do this. You saw that.
They wouldn't care. Oh, yeah, of course I saw it. And the curvature, the fisheye lens that they used on this thing, if the curvature of the Earth, remember, he was only at 120,000 feet. I can send you weather balloon footage like right now, 120,000 feet, flat as a freaking pancake. He's at 130,000 feet. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt, right? And the lens that he used, if the world had that much curvature at 130,000 feet, the world would only be about the size of half of Arizona.
Okay, but so
it'd be that small.
This is where, again, I mean, it's Mark.
Do you believe when you see that it was a great media shot, which is, do you believe the curvature of the Earth at 130,000 feet was that severe?
Well, no, I acknowledge that if he's using a GoPro, it has a fisheye filter or a fisheye lens.
What are we talking about?
Well, because there are ways of correcting it wherein you will still.
So why didn't he correct it?
Because you obviously correct a fisheye filter is a distortion of reality. Whereas once you can correct that, there will still be the curvature.
Why didn't he correct it? Why didn't he?
Well, first of all, why didn't he? Because he's got the GoPro as a function has a dedicated.
They didn't correct it because they wanted to make his altitude seem even more exaggerated. If you go up there and they show it perfectly flat, it's like, oh, okay, fine. I've seen that from an airplane. But at 130,000 feet, if you make it so severe, it's like, and he's wearing an astronaut suit, which he's not. He looks like an astronaut. And they're going, oh, well, obviously he's jumping from space. The average person bought it as like, he must be jumping from 100 miles up. No, he was at 130,000 feet.
Well, first of all, I don't think this is an interesting thing which neither can be proven or disproven why they did it. The fact is that's what a GoPro does. Right. Should he have gone up there with let's just say a Nikon 1424 lens, which doesn't have distortion, to show that the curvature would be less exaggerated than with a fisheye lens? I don't know that he's jumping with a Nikon. Maybe he could have done it. Did they do it for dramatic effect? I don't think so. It has a dramatic effect, there's no question. But the issue then would be another one where unless you do it, but then even if you see it, what you'll end up saying is that it's a question of perspective, or there'll be some sort of, I won't say atmospheric, atmospheric
lensing, yeah.
With when you're on the ground, but there'll be some other explanation as to it's the shape of your eye, or I mean,
Do you think? Okay, look. No, let me get into some Orwellian stuff for you, because I've heard this from so many people. Which is, I have seen the curvature of the Earth from fill in the blank here. I have seen it from a plane. I have seen it from a balloon. I have seen it from a mountaintop, and I've even had people say I can see the curvature of the Earth from the beach. There's a problem with that. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the most popular physicist and scientist in the world, has come out and says you cannot see the curvature from anywhere. No civilian has ever seen the curvature ever, ever, ever. So the question is, if you, and I put this challenge out to people, I say, look, people say, I see it. Have you ever been in an airplane? Stupid. It's like, fine, take a shot from your airplane window, put it on your laptop, put a straight edge up to it. Tell me if it's still curved. If it is, send it to me. I will quit Flat Earth tomorrow. 4 years. Nobody's sent anything, unless you want to count the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, which is absolutely ridiculous. Apparently the world is only 50 miles wide.
Okay, well, I'll check the. I have not. I didn't get we didn't do requests.
No, it's okay. I know we haven't prepped for this.
I've seen it from an airplane. I believe I've seen it.
Have you? Again, Orwellian, did you see it? And I will come back and say, no, you didn't see it. You wanted to see it, and there's a big difference there. Did you see 4 lights or did you see 5? You win. And I can't overstate this. You put a globe in the classroom at 6 years old, literally right next to an American flag. And you make it through high school, we'll say, right? That's 12 years of conditioning, to the point where people will fight for the American flag, and they will absolutely fight for the globe, because they are told this without even words, which is, this is your home. This is where you live. This is where you live every day, every month, every year until you graduate. Mark, that is the reinforcement. That is why it's so polarized. That's why some people in your chat room are losing their minds right now.
Yeah, look, I'm reading it. They look okay. I mean,
but in their head, they're going, why? Why are we talking about this? It's
some of them are going to have
wait. I got to get this out. Let me get this out. Which is, you'll appreciate this. There's a great George Orwell line. In fact, this is from a legal standpoint. This might actually work. George Orwell said in 1946, he said. He goes, he wasn't a flat earther, but he said, he was talking about how science, the responsibility of science, because people will believe whatever science says. He goes, you go to anyone on the street and you ask them how they know the Earth is a globe. They'll say, what are you talking about? We know it's a globe. It's a given, like math, right? It's a given. We know this. And then you say, yeah, but how do you know? Then they start getting angry.
No, but Mark,
the question is, how NASA wasn't even founded until 1958. How in 1946 did everybody know that it was a globe? It wasn't that they knew, it was because they were told. They were told this generation after generation, Mark, father, son.
But this is getting into a certain. Well, it's getting into a sermon about how people. I don't care. First of all,
well, you should care.
Oh no, I know why I believe it. I know the explanations for which I believe it. I understand now the ways which you say I don't believe it. I understand it.
Yeah,
we'll never agree with it because I think because like I said, you set up a premise that you can't be proven wrong because of the premises you've set up. And going back to I forget his name now, the jumping out of the Red Bull jump.
Baumgartner.
Even if we correct, I mean, there's ways to correct the fisheye lens.
But he didn't.
Well, he didn't. But
his marketing team didn't.
But if somebody does, I'm not asking.
And the media didn't comment on it either.
Well, the media is not going to comment, and it's not their obligation to. Their absence of commenting on it is not an evidence that the Earth is flat.
No, but if it's more dramatic, they're going to go with it. They knew, any photographer in the media knows that lens was absolutely skewed, but they're not going to correct it, nor are they going to mention it. It's like,
there'll be the internet challenge. But you will not accept because you have digital ways of correcting a fisheye lens. Sure. Someone's going to do it. It's not going to be me. But when someone does it, you're going to have an explanation as to why that curve is either perceived or why it looks that way, or why it's not a curve to begin with, or why there's a problem with the correction process. I suspect. I mean,
if somebody corrects the Felix Baumgartner, it comes down to who's correcting it. How much when you're correcting it, how much do you straighten it out? Do you leave a little bit of curve in at that point? And are they being objective when they're doing it? How much curve do you take out of that lens shot? Anyway.
Well, no, and then that's I'm looking. I'm just looking at some of the questions. But I agree. You're going to say the objectivity of the person, and that's going to be the out, which is why ultimately these arguments. We might get to this later, but I don't think they're scientific. Actually, I think.
Okay, let's jump to another one real quick, which would be the Tesla thing. Since you were fond of the Felix Baumgartner thing, you must have just loved the Tesla thing. Car in space, convertible in space. Bought it. Absolutely real. Absolutely 100% legit. Well, nothing wrong with that car at all.
Well, I first of all, I didn't. Not that I didn't buy it or did buy it. I didn't care about it, but I mean, I'll hear you out on it. But I think it's the same thing as the Baumgartner.
The impossible car. How many things can I point out wrong with that car in space? Oh no. How about, oh geez, the heating and cooling, negative 200 to something degrees to positive 200 degrees, when you're in the sunlight or the sunshade. The side windows would have spider webbed and shattered immediately. The front window would have spider webbed, maybe would have blown apart. Every pressurized system in that car, battery fluid, window washer fluid, brake fluid, pressurized systems exposed to a vacuum would have burst, would have frozen, would have been awful, would have been everywhere.
You know what, Mark? Well, you know what? We'll move off of that. It's a publicity stunt, whatever. If it's a publicity stunt,
then why put it out there as the absolute truth?
I don't think that was put out there as evidence to prove that the Earth is round.
Why? No. Why put it out there? You can't just show people a car in space. Say, "Yep, there's my car in space," and then never reel it back in. Come on, and then it's going to Mars with no logos on that car at all. It's like he was almost embarrassed. It was like they were trying to fake space on the cheap to see if they could get away with it in social media. It killed me.
Yeah,
that car was absolutely the worst. Not to mention the booster rocket that put it up there that supposedly opened up never fell off into frame. They had 3 different cameras. It's like, what put it up there? Oh no, we're going to show the rockets landing right next to each other, which would never ever done in a million years. Plus it was on Kennedy Space Center, which they're not friends with Tesla. They're not friends with SpaceX. They're direct competition. Oh, sorry. I could spend 2 hours on freaking.
Well, no, but you know what? But I think that's part of the. I think that's part of the problem because this type of argument, which might be legitimate against that picture, or for example, the moon landing, where there might be.
Oh, you want to get into the moon landing?
But this is where I think the part of the. No, I don't want to say indoctrination, but this is where part of the evidence is sort of imparting or imposing some of the legitimate criticisms of other stuff to then support your theory. That picture is neither here nor there as far as proving that the Earth is flat.
Oh, it is to us though, because remember we and I know from a legal standpoint it probably drives you nuts. We come at it from a shotgun pattern approach, which is why, like when I don't know, you probably didn't see it when there were. For example, I'll give you the Georgetown University guy. We do not get a chance to argue with physicists very often. There was a physicist from Georgetown University set up by a German television team. And they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to record 5 questions from you. We're going to put it on video. We're going to send it to him. That way you're not talking over each other. He's going to record the answers. I gave him 5 questions. They were just a shotgun pattern approach. The vacuum of space, long distance photography, the eclipse shadow, the temperature of the moon, and the Van Allen radiation belts. And he folded like a card table. That was it. He was like, nope, not doing this. Because what you just said there. Yes, it's all the little things. It's kind of like mechanics, what they do to you at a body shop. It's like, well, there's a lot of little things that are wrong with the car. You have enough little things, they really, really add up. And
I think with the O'Reilly, there was a guy who I think posted a response to those 5 points on YouTube.
Of course they did.
Okay,
they had to.
There was
why didn't the Georgetown physicist do it? Why didn't he do it? I don't care about if YouTube guy posts a response. I don't care anymore.
Okay, so this is where it becomes where the evidence becomes one of intentions of the interlocutor. Like, and an interesting strategy for anybody watching is you want to undermine deGrasse Tyson because he's not credible, but then you also want to invoke his authority to say that nobody can see the Earth is flat.
Yep.
Which is classic arguing from conclusions and not towards them, which is then using as an authority one person who you discredited because of their lack of authority.
Yep, it works.
So I'm going to look for some more questions. Everyone hit up the questions if I've missed something. But in the flat Earth theory, in the flat Earth model, things? Why are we pulled to the ground?
Oh, I think it's gravity. No, I believe. Look, in fact, again, let's use the Neil deGrasse. You know what? Forget about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Mainstream science will tell you that they can't tell you what gravity is. They can only tell you what it does. They can only tell you the symptoms of it because they can't replicate it in an independent field. Which is fine. And they say it's this magical molecular force that pulls things down to the center of the Earth. And from my standpoint, and there's other people in the flat Earth community which will argue the density thing, but I don't care. Which is in mine, because look, we do this in simulations all the time. It's called a physics engines. Gravity is a magical molecular force that just pulls things straight down. No difference. In fact, very, very little difference, with the exception is mainstream says it's the core of the Earth, and I say it's straight down into whatever landmass this is that we can't define because, look, you can't drill past 8 miles anyway.
Okay, now hold on a second.
So I think gravity is real. That's the short version. I know people ask that all the time.
Well, I'll get to it because when I get back to the edge. But Jeremy Anthony, lunar eclipses from different viewpoints on Earth is always curved, proving the spheric model. Why can't flat earthers, where I just lost the question, provide a working model? For
what, the lunar eclipse?
For the lunar, to explain why the lunar eclipse.
Come on, And I know it's not a cop out when I say this. Look, we can create a lunar eclipse in a planetarium right now. We have been since the 70s. This is not hard to do. We can create a blood moon. We can create a lunar eclipse. We can't do solar eclipse very well right now because of the lumens. We just don't have that tech. Although our OLED tech is getting better. In fact, real quick, for anyone who wants to look this up, look up a company called Colux that can put a skylight in your bedroom with a simulated sun and a blue sky that's absolutely identical to the real thing, to where it will fall you with perspective. And they've been able to do this since 2014.
So actually, while we're talking about the moon now, the moon. Is the moon round, or is the moon the same spherical shape as the Earth with the same dome?
No. Is the moon 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional?
Is the moon a globe, or is it a?
I don't know. I mean, all I can tell you is, not for sure. All I can tell you is the sun generates an incandescent light, and the moon generates a cool LED light. And by that, I mean a refrigerant light. I challenge anyone to test this. You can buy a $20 point-and-click thermometer at a hardware store. The moon light generates, it cools things down, meaning we all know it's 90 degrees in the sunlight and 80 degrees in the shade, right? Well, if you're 50 degrees in the moonlight, it's actually 60 degrees in the moonshade, up to like a 13-degree swing. I didn't even believe it when I saw it. Now, does that prove a flat Earth? No, it doesn't, but it absolutely blows away any relationship between the sun and the moon.
Well, hold on. I actually, not to get into that, but I believe the cool light, which I maybe heard something about, is scientifically inaccurate. But again, not.
We can test this all. There's videos.
Mark, part of the problem might be doing homemade experiments with $20, Home Depot thermometers, as opposed to actually scientifically appropriate equipment. But again, it's a side issue, because I think this is like another one where you say, the cooling effect of the moon's light, which is actually just slower, whatever. It's a side issue, which then is confusing or can be used to confound the issues or create suspicion.
Yep.
Or just.
Let me. You're absolutely right. Okay, in a legal, and I know I'm going to butcher the legal terms here, but let me throw this at you. The reason why flat Earth has gotten so big and so weird and everywhere, and why it doesn't care about how rich you are, powerful. We get into just about every demographic you can think of, which is weird. Isn't because, can I prove the flat Earth to you right now? Nope, it can't. I can create so much reasonable doubt in the globe that by the time I'm done, for the average person, not you, you're a pillar, which is, by the time I'm done, there's no place left for you to turn except for some sort of flat Earth model. Whatever that flat Earth model is, dome or no dome, or lands beyond, or however the continents are laid out, everyone that tries to go back to the globe can't. It is classic red pill, blue pill. But again, can I prove it? Nope. But again, for us, it comes down to reasonable doubt. That's all we need, and that's why it works.
What was the question I was going to ask? Okay, let's get. I mean, getting to the edges of the flat Earth. I mean, what happens when you hit the wall of the true? Sorry, Barney.
The dog barks.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of dogs. And by the way, I'm glad you asked that, because so many people get stuck on space that the edge, that this disc flying through space. It's like, who told you there was space in the first place? Like, if you're in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling, that building could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be space. So there's no cosmic waterfall. And I know the Thor movies completely screwed that up. Damn Asgard with all their cosmic waterfalls.
I haven't seen the Thor movies.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, don't. No, I mean, they're fine. I mean, it's good. Marvel Universe is fine. But anyway, so when you get out to Antarctica, the edge of the world, right? People think, okay, well, the Antarctic coastline is the edge of the world. No. What we're saying is the United States military and the Soviets figured out that Antarctica was much, much, much larger than we thought. Meaning the Antarctic coastline, by the time you get from that point to the edge of the world, wherever the edge, and by that, we're just saying the wall of the world, wherever that thing is probably thousands of miles. Thousands, because they were looking for the better part of 30 years, Admiral Byrd. And whatever's out there, take a pick, whatever it's made out of. People's like, well, what is it? It's like, I don't know. It's a soft barrier. It's a hard barrier. It's a heavy element, heavy metal, force field, unified field, high frequency. I don't know. Whatever it is, we can't get through it. That's why the United States and Soviet Union were trying to punch through it for 4 years with atomic weapons. Could not do it, not even close. And probably didn't help matters by firing weapons in an enclosed structure for all those years. And then they gave up simultaneously. So sorry, that's the answer to the question. We don't know what's out there, but it's not the edge. But point is, it's the edge is not the Antarctic coastline. It is way in, which is why the Antarctic Treaty was put into place.
incidentally, this is sort of one of the questions I was more reluctant to ask, just because I knew what your answer is going to be, because it's going to be the same thing as when you ask someone what happens when you get to the edge of the universe, what's happening at the edge of the universe. So, I mean,
what universe? I mean, remember, if this place, I'm not saying, and I don't want to get into the biblical side of things, because people say, well, you're saying that God is lying. This is a big deception. I'm going, no, it's a test. If 99.999% of the population believe in the illusion, that's what you go with. Something Carl Sagan said, which is like, wow, the universe is a lot of wasted space. It just seems like there's huge tracts of nothingness. It's like, yeah, it's because it's not real. It's just an illusion. It's to give the impression that it's very, very vast, and it inspires the imagination. Hey, great, fantastic. But it's still an illusion.
Okay, but you know, now I sort of think I do have to get back to the moon. Do we recognize that the moon is round, but not necessarily spherical? Or you just don't?
At least round, not sure if it's spherical. Definitely cannot land on it. And no, and I know it's a litmus test for some people out there, which is where we throw it out there. It's like, do you believe absolutely 100% that the Apollo program was real?
No, forget that. I don't even want to get into that. The Earth is round, but you can't tell if it's spherical. And then how would you account for the different shadows on the moon, or the curved shadows on the moon, or the
curved shadows on the moon? We can make curved shadows on the moon. It's not tough. I'm sorry. Whoever built this we had nothing to do with this. Just so you know, we did not build this place. Curved shadows on the moon are no different than a planetarium. We can do waxing and waning crescents and all the other fun stuff.
Well, hold on. Sorry. They are different than a planetarium because we built the planetarium. Are you saying that whoever built the cosmos is creating a fake curve on the moon to trick us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, and not even necessarily a trick. It's just an interpretation on our part.
Okay, but so Mark, you realize I'll never be able to. No one will ever be able to convince you. And I don't say that they have to. If the bottom line is, I see it, but it's an illusion intended to deceive. It's not intended. Rather, it is either intended to deceive or it's just deceptive. But I see the curved shadow on the moon and I disregard it to prove that the Earth is actually spherical.
Because we can make it here. Yes. If we couldn't make it here, if we had no technology available to us that could simulate this, then I'd be like, oh, wow, I don't know. But come on, we've been able to do this for a long time now. Long is relative, 40 years at least, 50.
Yeah, but Mark, I don't think the criteria of an explanation is our ability to replicate it here. I mean, I also think that that's neither here nor there. But the bottom line is,
it very well is here or there, though, because especially if you get into the whole quantum mechanics and like the double slit experiment, for example.
No, I got to stop you because this is another. Let's stick with the moon because.
Okay.
Right now we agree that the moon is round because I have a telephoto lens and I've taken a picture of it. It's round. I can see shadows on the moon. And
round or spherical? You think it's
it's perfectly round when I take it with my lens. I can conclude that it's spherical because of the curved shadows on the moon and because that one side is darker than the other sometimes.
Right. If you take your camera to a planetarium and you can see the moon of I've gotten this argument from astronomers all day long, which is if you take a camera to a planetarium, and it's like, I can see Jupiter, and I go, fine. Can you see Jupiter in a planetarium? Yes, I can. Does it look spherical? Yes, it does. And they go, yeah, but I'm in a building. I'm going, who's to say when you didn't walk out of that building, you're just walking into a much bigger one?
Yeah, okay, but you see, and this is, I think,
and in fact, what staggers me, and I'm not picking on you, is that because this is not a new concept. This is something that we've talked about in science fiction for forever, which is, the possibility that we are in, a snow globe on some guy's desk on a laboratory desk. So if all those great science fiction stories, didn't you think it would be kind of like lottery tickets? Do you think that one of them might actually be true? We've covered the gamut of possibilities of what this world could be. What if one of them was true? Just because it doesn't agree with mainstream science, does that make it less true?
No, but look, but the what if and are we living in I think it was Elon Musk that floated the idea of living in a simulator. There are certain what ifs that you will never be able to definitively prove or disprove. Do I even exist? But observational evidence, if what the bottom line is, I'm going to take the observational evidence and say I'm disregarding it because who knows? It could be. It could be then. Yeah, then I agree. Well, no one will ever convince you because you're unconvincible or you are unable to be convinced otherwise. But faced with observational sort of tangible evidence, 100 years ago, I don't think I was able to take such a detailed picture of the moon from my roof with a 400 millimeter telephoto lens. Right. And I can do it, and I can see with my own eyes and on paper difference in shadows. Not just that it's round from the picture, but it's round because of the shade, because of the shadow, because I know how light works. Who knows? Maybe it's a projection. Yeah, I mean, nobody could disagree with that. So if that's the discussion, sort of
that's okay. The one thing you're leaving out there is you're going off of previous observational evidence, and we are digging up and rewriting all the other observational evidence recently. Meaning over the last 3-4 years, we've been coming up with our own, which is, look, we think there are breadcrumbs. And you're saying, well, it can never be proven. I'm going, I disagree. I say that there's clues out there. There are breadcrumbs out there that all lead towards the same thing. Look, if any one of these things, I said this when I was making the clues, like I said, if I find a clue that goes completely in the other direction on the flat earth, I will walk away from flat earth. I don't want to do flat earth. I hate flat earth some days. I hate it. Everybody hates it. So why are so many people in it? Why are so many people talking about it?
Well, so here's my personal theory. I do believe that this is more akin to a religion or a philosophy, and in a non-judgmental sense, because I'll explain to you, and then you can tell me, because you know who the followers are. Right. It's either more of a religion or a philosophy, in the sense that it is people who want to critically question everything from the most concrete observational evidence to other more
sure,
and so it's
why not?
A frame of mind.
So social media has changed that game in that regards. It's like, look, we all know there's conspiracies out there, right? It's just a question of what lies you're willing to buy into and what lies you're not. I mean, everybody knows in business and politics and sports and entertainment and journalism and even science, there's conspiracies every day, really, really bad ones. So, and social media has now put those out there to where if you want to go into rabbit holes, there's a whole bunch of rabbit holes. And this,
but ultimately, I think that's why call it a litmus test, but I think the flat earth is sort of the litmus test for the people with that frame of mind, who want to take other more justifiable examples and then apply the same thinking. But this is sort of like, this is the statement. It's sort of like a religious statement. It's sort of like wearing a cross to show what fundamental core beliefs you have, right, in order to then know the group with whom you stand, sort of. Which is sort of what I think this is ultimately looks like from an outside observer.
Sure.
Is it comes down to some form of faith or fundamental, actually probably the exact opposite of faith, fundamental skepticism, to justify this fundamental skepticism in all aspects of life. But you have to start with the most shocking one in order to make the statement that this is what I believe and this is how I view the world.
That is true. What I try to call it, and it was interesting that a lot of people, I joked about this in the first clue I did, which is I literally knew people that would tell me that the entire royal family is made out of lizards. And when I told them, yeah, what about flat earth? I go, get the hell out of here. I mean, they would literally just dismiss me, even though they believed in things that I thought were more shocking at the time.
Yeah, and they believe in it, Mark. Try to prove to them that the royal family is not made out of lizards. I mean, I've never touched the royal family, and then even if I do touch them and feel that they're human flesh, I'll say, well, it's a very sophisticated lizard design. I mean,
there are people that of course believe in everything, and I do. Again, to your listeners, I put forth the same thing. It's like, look, I'm not here to convince you. I'm not even really here to persuade you. I'm just here to plant the seed and say, look, don't believe what I'm talking. Don't do your own research. That's how everybody gets into it. It's like, in fact, I go the other way. Which is, you know what? If you like your life the way it is, if you think you got a good beat on things are, you wake up every day, it's like everything is awesome, thumbs up. Don't look into flat earth. And I know that's reverse psychology, but it's true. Don't do it, because everyone that does it, it's a trap. Once you get in, you all of a sudden become, because once you do it, it becomes the ultimate open-minded experience. And then you revisit everything else that you've ever even thought about.
And just so nobody thinks that this was not an invitation to, I mean, I don't want to consider this like an invitation to plant a seed or anything. This was a discussion. I don't think it was not a question of planting a seed. It was a question of actually just understanding.
Oh, I know.
Now, I fundamentally understand your arguments. I understand where we're 99% of people are going to disagree on the factual evidence of those arguments. And ultimately, I think...
No, I got to stop you there. Where'd you come up with 99%?
Well, I think because the three arguments, I know where we're going to end. The curvature of the Earth, in terms of the explanation for the number one piece of evidence, I know where we're going to ultimately disagree.
Right.
On the curve on the moon, I mean, I know we're going to disagree now. How do I know it's not an illusion? I don't know that.
Okay.
And that's what I mean. Like, I understand your arguments; they're interesting. I mean, I think it's sort of it's the Zenonian paradox in a sense, where you're saying like the arrow in flight is always at rest. And you know what? It's a fun intellectual game to sharpen your critical thinking. But the arrow, by the time you finish your argument, is in the bullseye and it's in motion. So regardless of amazingly tricky intellectual arguments you can raise to try to prove that the arrow in flight is always at rest. Right. It's not. And I think what you're, and I ultimately now having listened and talked with you, it's an intellectual exercise. I think it's one that doesn't actually have an end game because of not the circular reasoning, but because of the
people. Yeah, I know what you mean, but people love a mystery, and so you're right. There is, that's why we're looking for it.
Well, actually, you said that people love mystery, and it triggered something that I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget. Yeah, which is another one of my things in this is I question whether or not this is being treated as something like not a fantasy ride for adults, but things where people who may not necessarily believe the Earth is flat, but get into the movement because of everything else that it entails. Which is sort of where I think it goes in terms of the people who are leading this. Who's the guy? I don't know if he's Canadian, but the guy in
Canada,
Logan Paul's documentary, David Robertson.
Oh, Robbie Davidson. Yeah.
Robbie Davidson. Yeah. Okay. Do they give cruises to the purported edge?
Oh my God. No. I'm glad you asked that, by the way, because that shows you, by the way, how things have changed. It used to be that the media had to do follow-up references, and they had to make sure that, if you're media and you wanted to steal from another person, usually called up that paper and said, hey, can I use your byline? Can I use your article? Nowadays, they don't care anymore. If there's 3 or 4 people that already did it. So what happened was the U.S. conference this year was in Dallas, and next year's was going to be out of Miami on a boat. And somebody wrote a story kind of joking. It's like, oh, if they're on a boat, they should take it to the edge of the world, right? And they just mentioned that in passing. And I don't remember what the headline was, but it kind of alluded to that. And then somebody else picked up on the headline. Next thing you know, there are 20 different media outlets running that we're taking an expedition to the edge of the world. Logan Paul's in on it. And who else was? Oh, and it's part of a documentary out of London. None of those things are true.
No, that's fine. I was expecting another answer if it were true, that it was sort of like we get to the edge and we say we can't go any further because
you're not going to put a cruise ship anywhere near icebergs. Are you kidding me? That's why they have icebreakers.
This is a much simpler, more direct answer. But let me get one question that I see Jared P is asking, and it actually reminds me of what I wanted to ask. One of the questions as well. I'm going to go through my list and make sure I hit all of them. You're saying the U.S., Russia, Japan, and the space exploration are all launching satellites orbiting the Earth, pushing the same theories and views of Earth. So, more generally speaking, what is the rationale to propagate this conspiracy that the Earth is round?
The easy one, I'll use the cliche one, which is power, control, and that is, think of it this way: if you're pushing the globe model for 5 centuries at least, and then all of a sudden there is a chance that it's not, do you tell the public? And by that I mean, think of the 3 things. I'll rattle them off real quick. 3 things that will happen. Which 3 tiers. One would be academic, one would be economic, one would be religious. Academically, astrophysics and astronomy would be devastated overnight. The remaining physical sciences, I don't care, geology, hydrology, archaeology, biology, any physical sciences have to be retooled literally from the ground up. Economically, and you know this, you would have to suspend world markets for months to try to figure out where the dust settles. I mean, if Donald Trump caught pneumonia tomorrow, the market would react. That's one guy. You all of a sudden throw this paradigm into the mix, it'd be devastating. But the biggest one would be the religious side, which is, why would you keep this thing a secret? Well, the 5 major religious houses, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, you're all of a sudden giving all of them simultaneously leverage against science. And you think they're going to act with some restraint? I don't think anyone's going to take that. It's like, because all of a sudden, because it doesn't stop there. It's like, okay, so you were wrong about the globe. What else are you wrong about? Evolution, the Big Bang Theory, dark matter. We should revisit these. And all of a sudden, science is on the ropes. It's a dangerous time. And so I don't blame them. Trust me when I say this. I try to put myself in other people's shoes. I'm a big believer in empathy, which is, do I think it was the right decision when they figured this out in about 1960 to not tell the public? Yeah. I do. The meeting was short. It was like, look, we can't do this until we figure out a way to roll this out to the people. Now it seems, because we seem to be getting their help in most cases, the biggest corporation in the world, Google, I think they're the biggest anyway. They've been doing nothing but help us for at least 3 years, and only lately have they been putting the brakes on us. Which is, once they roll it out to the population, now you can get everybody on the same page. You've got high-speed internet, social media, and 6 billion smartphones. It's a perfect time to release this. I think it's going to. I think it's gonna come out eventually.
Okay, one. Let me ask one question that I want to make sure.
Right.
You believe in gravity. Why isn't the moon falling into the Earth?
Again, everyone gets stuck on the space paradigm, which is why. What moon? What object? What if the moon is only less than 50 miles wide? What's it gonna do? It's not hard to keep that thing up there if it's three-dimensional at all. It may only be a two-dimensional spotlight for all we know, or a reflection of another projection device. Don't know. The moon's not crashing anything. It's not a 2,000 mile wide object. That's, again, people kind of like the time zone thing. It's like, well, how is the whole world not lit up at the same time? I'm going, because you're thinking of the sun as a 400,000 mile wide object, which it's not. It's this tiny, tiny little light. And it works not just in computer simulations, it works in a physical model. We've made tons and tons of physical models where if you have a tiny, tiny pinpoint of light, it only shines up that area.
Yeah, but I mean, Mark, I can answer the question for you. For me, if the moon is only 50 miles wide, how do you explain the tides? And then the answer is going to be that's just the projection. That's just
no, not at all. What? Okay, and I know I'm look, when I started doing this as a thought experiment, I had to put myself in the mindset of whoever built this place. I had to basically, I'm not going to say I had to be in the mind of God, because I think the God's actually bigger than this. I think he actually subcontracted out the work. And that is, when you're building something in a sandbox like this, you don't create a gravitational directional force from the moon. You do the tides from below. You use whatever gravitational force you're using down below, you use that for the tides as well. It makes it much, much more efficient. You don't put a directional gravitational field around a 50 mile wide object. You just don't do it. Sorry. That's how I would build it.
And so, but then,
and that's how we build it in physics engines here. When we do things, we do simulations with the tide. We don't put the tide forces connected to the moon. The moon, of course, remember the sky, the stars and the planets and the moon and the sun are just some giant clock system. If the moon syncs up with the tides, hey, great, that's fantastic. Doesn't mean the moon's causing the tides.
Okay, so no explanation for what actually causes the tides, or
gravity, directional gravitational force. You just do it from down below. If gravity is artificial, then the tides are a easy deviation from that.
Okay, let me get one question here. I'm going to get to the questions that Ian sent me by text. I didn't realize there were a bunch there. Okay. Earth is flat. Why is it light? Where does the sun go at night?
Oh God, it goes off into the distance. Look up flat Earth sunrise, sunset on YouTube. The short version is between the atmosphere and it just going off into the distance. Remember, it's super tiny. What
is going off into the distance?
The light source that is the sun. Remember, if it's super small, then it just goes off into the distance. It's still very, very bright, but that's all it does.
It goes off as in the light ceases to project light, or the sun itself moves away and goes.
It moves away.
The sun.
Yeah, the sun physically moves. And I know I'm kind of sorry. I'm getting text too. The sun and the moon are traveling around us. I know you haven't really looked at the model that much. I mean, you may have glanced at it. The sun and moon are moving around us like a mobile above a child's crib. Only most of the models show the sun as thousands of miles wide. The moon is thousands of miles wide, but that's only done for graphical illustrations. In reality, they're super tiny. Remember, if you look at the map and you take like a 50-mile chunk, that's tiny. It's a pinprick.
Okay, now I'm just going to think scientifically here. If the sun is smaller than science says it is,
right,
going to have to be hotter than science says it is.
Oh boy, here we go into the heat thing. Not all of the heat.
No,
it's okay. Trust me, I answer these questions all the time. The heat, this world, if it's an enclosed building, all the heat sources aren't going to come from one thing. Kind of like, okay, so if the moon is not a gravitational directional field that's controlling the tides, the sun, yeah, it generates heat, sure, but it doesn't generate all the heat that we need down here. The rest of it's going to come from the jet stream, which is just a giant air conditioning system, the underwater conveyor system, which is down in the oceans, which also transfers massive amounts of energy, and then, of course, the magma system below that. The combination of all those handles our heat needs, but the sun is not the exclusive heat energy source.
Okay, now
good questions though, because I don't actually get that one that much.
Well, no, I mean, because it's only logical. I mean, I do notice.
No, that's good.
When the sun goes away, I don't know that the ocean belts are responsible for the change of the seasons, but
no. Okay, so the sun. No, the seasons is a completely different question, meaning the sun doesn't keep the same track, obviously. Doesn't keep the same track around this thing. So it's kind of, again, dates me, needle on a record player. So the needle, as the song's playing, goes in, and then if you reverse it, it would go out. So the sun and the moon take different tracks, slightly different every single day.
Okay, Judas Scott wants me to ask about the volcanoes, but I think I know what your answer is going to be. I mean, I'm not even sure.
Yeah, it's the least favorite of anything because no one can imagine it. And that is, look, it's a magma system. And people say, well, if it's a magma system, it's got to be organic. And I said, why would you make anything organic in this world? If this world was built, then everything is artificial. Absolutely everything. If you're going to have a special terrarium for your pet lizard, and you're going to have a light bulb and a water thing and a little fan, you're not going to make an artificial heating system, or you're not going to do an organic heating system from below. It's going to be artificial.
Okay, let me just see if I missed any of my questions. I didn't. Now let me get the questions that Ian was flagging. Explain the 24-hour sun in Antarctica, which is actually sort of fitting based on what you're going after now. So let's. I mean,
that's by the way, that is my least favorite of everything out of all the things, because of course the Antarctic Treaty, we can't do anything down there. And by the way, it's the Antarctic Treaty, the unbreakable treaty, all the way up until 2040. The only in the history of the world, never been an unbreakable treaty. Don't know what's happening in Antarctica with the Antarctic sun. I really don't. It's either multiple light sources or somebody's lying, but I believe that there's 24-hour sun down there. I do. I just don't know how it's being done. There's some things I'm going to say, look, I don't know because we don't have access to it.
It's fair enough. Let me, before I forget, Logan Paul, you didn't appear in his Flat Earth documentary.
No, I walked out of the conference the second he showed up.
Okay, let's hear this just because it's good.
Okay, Logan Paul was, he and his brother Jake, I consider blights on the internet. And I found out earlier about that whole Suicide Forest thing. I don't know if you knew his.
Well, that I knew about from previous.
Okay, the Suicide Forest thing really offended me in so many ways. And what the problem was is that the promoter, via Logan Paul's request, kept it an absolute secret. Nobody knew he was coming. Even the speakers, me, nobody knew. And then it was released 12 hours before the conference opened that, oh yeah, it was Logan Paul. I'm going, it can't be. This guy does never made a serious piece in his life. He literally trolls the internet for a living, and he ran out of people to troll in the United States. So you start going over to Europe and Japan, trolling everyone. He's just a poor man's version of Jackass and Johnny Knoxville, who did it better, by the way.
I said he's more akin to Sacha Baron Cohen in Borat or
well, but he does, but Logan doesn't do disguises. Sasha or Sasha?
Whatever. Sasha.
Whatever. Sasha is way more talented than Logan ever would be. Anyway, so I just said nope. And I tried to talk to the other speakers, but the problem was nobody knew who he was because his demographic skews really, really young. And so nobody knew. I'm going, look, you can't be here. I go, this is a mistake. And nobody was listening. So I said, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm not going to be anywhere near his cameras. And I was absolutely vindicated because months later he comes out with this piece and it's just horrible.
Well, I mean, for my own personal benefit, was it pitched as being a documentary or as I mean, you guys don't know who Logan Paul, or the community did not know who he was, but
the community didn't know who he was. But the thing was, he pitched it as a documentary, and his entire staff lied. I didn't think. I mean, and I knew it was part of the gag, which was the story was that his friend was actually a flat earther, and he was trying to convince Logan, and that's how they were going to get their foot in the door. And it was a mistake. And luckily, there were other people that didn't agree, with Logan coming, but I was the only one that left. And I just did it as more of a statement than anything else. It was like, look, we don't need someone like him anywhere near our community. Now, in the end, it helped the metrics because a lot of people jumped on it, and he says, "Oh, I punked the internet." It's like, no, you didn't punk the whole internet. But there were a lot of stories written on it. So, hey, great, fantastic. More for us. I was just grateful at the end that he did not become a representative for the community. That's what I was worried about more than anything, that he would actually, like, people would start asking him questions and he would just kind of muddle his way through it like other people have tried to do. And he didn't. So in the end, we dodged a big bullet there.
I'm going to read one question. I think we addressed it, but I will say hi to Saman Mofid, who says, why is the eclipse seen differently from parts of the Earth? We did this question, right?
Yeah, we did this. It's no different than the moon phases. The eclipse, look, anything on the moon can be simulated. I can't stress it enough. And I know that probably bugs you, but
No,
but it
yeah,
can be.
it doesn't bug me because that's the impasse. Everything can be simulated, and
Everything can be. Elon Musk said that for a reason, and I don't want to end your thing with this, but I absolutely believe in simulation theory. I absolutely look. I grew up in that world. I know exactly what we can make and what we're capable of. The problem is the average person, and I don't care if I had like a week to spend with them, I couldn't explain it to them. I have to start somewhere, which is it's flat and it's enclosed. And if you are willing to buy that, then I can talk to you about other stuff. But you have to start somewhere, and that is because every simulation we make is flat. That a lot of people don't know that, and that is developers make worlds that are absolutely flat. And the reason is because it's easy. It's if nobody wants to build in curvature and all that freaking math, so they just build it. It's like, we'll build it flat. No one's going to notice, and they don't. They absolutely don't. Kind of like the astronaut suit. Nobody notices why it doesn't turn into a basketball.
Well, I'd say the most mind-blowing thought experiment that or it was scientific, it wasn't science. It was a thought experiment, was the idea that we've been brought up with the idea that there's a universe, one solar universe, and then one astrophysicist put the idea forward of the multiverse, like we're in a
Sure.
of water, and each universe comes and expands and bubbles off, and another one comes in. And I mean, they're interesting. They're interesting theories, but yeah, at some point we are going from sort of sci-fi theorizing to the justifications now, which I think we can fairly describe as finding alternative hypotheses to trump physical observation. And then that's where that's not where discussion ends. That's where the point of disagreement occurs,
right?
And we know we're not going to go any further. Now, the one thing actually, and which is getting to this within the flat Earth community, you guys, the community itself does tackle other conspiracy theories. They address a number of other conspiracy theories as well.
If we have to, yes.
Okay, I mean, I've never been to a flat Earth conference, but you do discuss the moon landing. You discuss whatever other sort of. If
it ties into flat Earth, yes. We talk about that more often than most, and I won't rattle off some of the other conspiracies because I don't want to get dark things or get you in trouble. Any other conspiracy. So just about every conspiracy dovetails into flat Earth because the flat Earth is the world, so every conspiracy is inside it. But if it's part of the deception, like everything that has to do with the space agency or NASA or the moon landing, yeah, we'll talk about those when we talk about other conspiracies. Like for me, for example, I'll say, look, if you want to talk about you take your pick, JFK, Pearl Harbor, every American war, or the smaller regional ones, yeah, I'll talk about them. But and most people, yes, if they believe in flat Earth, they do believe in the others. But there's a huge difference there, which is you could ask a flat earther, rank me your top 100 conspiracies in order of importance. That list is going to be very different from person to person to person to person, with the exception of flat Earth being at the top in most cases.
Oh, okay. Wait, two questions here. One, how do you explain these 6 Infinity Stones and Thanos snap? Okay, this is Jared P, and that's a joke.
No, I by the way, I'm looking forward to the final movie. And I had some. I'm sorry. I'll answer it with this, which is I love plot holes. I love finding plot holes in movies, which is why I liked looking at Flat Earth, because I was looking for the plot holes. My ultimate plot hole for that movie is why didn't they just the obvious one? Why didn't they just sling ring off his hand in the first place? Why didn't they just cut off his hand?
I have certifiably no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sure.
I used to own a comic book shop.
I don't get to watch movies that are not cartoons for kids anymore. So I have not seen that. As I just wanted to ask it as a joke.
That's okay.
One other one. Where is it? Jeremy Anthony. I mean, I think we know the answer to this question. How do you account for the fact that objects weigh 0.35% less or 35% less? How do objects weigh less at the equator than at the poles?
Show me. Wait a minute, 0.35?
Jeremy, is it 0.35 or it's not 35%? It weighs.
No, it can't be 35%. Is it 3%?
Poles, which can be explained through centrifugal force, spinning of a globe. I mean,
all right. Well, I'll counter it with this. I'll counter it with this. Because what you're doing, you're going to prove one of our points, which is centrifugal force, which is if we have this nice sheen of water across the entire thing, right? Gravity's holding it down, but centrifugal force, meaning like a merry-go-round, is going to pull things outwards, right? If it's two-dimensional like a merry-go-round, it's going to pull things off to the top or off to the side. But if it's three-dimensional, it's going to pull it to the center, right? Why aren't the seas freaking huge at the equator? If water, remember, water moves really, really easily. We know this. You hold a cup of coffee, make a sharp left-hand turn. Water moves really easy when it comes to gravity. Why isn't there this massive band, this massive spare tire around? Why is there any land mass at all that's not underwater at the equator? Remember, it should be like Saturn's rings, but with water. I'm not saying water would be out in space, which would be a whole different thing. Why isn't there this big thing? And why is there water at the poles? Why isn't there bald spots at the top and the bottom? Why are those things not there?
Yeah, and this gets back into the flaw, the not the flawed nature, but rather the what's the word? The disprovable nature of the theory. Yes, the rings of Saturn. So, do we acknowledge that Saturn is a globe or spherical?
No, not at all. What? I'm sorry if I use those points, but I should preface every time I say that, although I won't. With mainstream science says. So if mainstream science shows us that Saturn's rings, that this is why centrifugal force, this massive centrifugal force from Saturn, then why don't we see that on Earth with water? Water is way easier. Water moves so easy when it comes to gravitational forces. Why don't we see that? Sorry, I didn't mean to say. I'm not trying to pick and say. I'm just saying, look, if one's like this and one's like this, why aren't they consistent?
No, I mean that might.
The moon, perfect argument, which is everyone knows in science that our moon is way too big for our planet. Compared to every other planet out there, our moon is huge. Why? No one explains it. Why is it very coincidentally? Okay, first of all, why is it absolutely locked visually? Meaning we only see one face of the moon and we don't even see a quarter of a degree change in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. Why don't we ever see that? And why is it 400 times more narrow than the sun, but exactly 400 times farther or closer than the sun, which is why the eclipse.
That's the question that's been asked and answered, is that it's the relative size to the distance.
It's just a coincidence. It's just a lucky coincidence.
No.
How about parallax scrolling? If some stars are 4 light years away and some stars are 1 million light years away, why don't we ever see parallax scrolling? The zodiacs are in the same position every time for thousands of years. The zodiacs have not changed. Parallax scrolling should be real. It should be evident. We never ever see it. And so, oh no, we see like this tiny degree of change every once in a while. It's like, no, we don't.
I'm just looking now to see how long we've been going for because I don't see the time.
Hour 45.
Hour 45. Okay, well, let me give a few more seconds to anyone to throw some that are serious questions in case I didn't get to something. But I think I got to tell you, I think we've exhausted it for my own personal enlightenment. I think we've exhausted it. I've gotten answers to the questions that I've always had.
I'm glad.
But I also I've seen the reasoning and I've seen the thought process. And ultimately, it's not to be. This is not the purpose was never to be demeaning. I do view this more as a philosophy in terms of a view of the world, and it's as opposed to a science, which is interesting. I mean, you're describing something which could be which could be depicted in a science fiction movie. And it's a creative way to interpret the visual evidence that we live with.
The reason, let me, and I know we'll wrap here pretty soon, but the reason why, like, if you want to look up some numbers on this, look up the reason why National Geographic reached out. And the reason why other people have been getting science is freaking out recently is because of a survey that was done by u.gov out of London. They're a scientific research group that decided to poll 10,000 Americans and ask them about this because they were curious. And the 18 to 24-year-olds were skewing a full third were against the globe. Now they couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but they weren't buying the globe anymore. And that was just the 18 to 24-year-olds. It seems like as we go younger, remember they can't even talk to the 12 to 17s. They're not legally entitled to talk to them. So what we kind of figured out is that because I was trying to summarize this at some point, it's like, okay, why is this happening? Why am I talking to you? Why am I going to meet a high school here in a couple hours? Why am I doing all this stuff? And it's because remember what I said earlier that people love easy. People always take the easy option. It's why we text instead of call in a lot of cases, although I refuse to text because I'm old. And that is, we have now created a model of the world that is easier to understand than the globe. And by that, I mean, we use almost no math. There's a lot of connect the dots, a lot of philosophy, what you're saying, a little smattering of religious overtones. And the science up until now has, again, had all just math. It's like, because remember, if you have a globe in one hand and a flat earth on the other, the globe, even though they're about the same size, right? I don't have the models in front of me. The globe cannot stand on its own. Remember, the globe needs a solar system. It needs a sun and other planets, and it needs a galaxy around that. It needs a universe around that. Whereas a flat Earth, that's it. That's all you need. In fact, there could be a flat Earth sitting on my desk right now. And that's easier to understand. And I know you say, well, that doesn't make it right. I'm going, no, it doesn't necessarily make it right. But people latch on to that. They can get their head around that a lot easier. Remember, because it's going back to old school. The reason why people, every culture drew the same freaking snow globe, you can look it up. They all drew the same thing. It's kind of like the Close Encounters thing when everyone drew Devil's Tower.
I haven't seen that in.
All right. Well, you know what I mean. It was like, why are these people? Why is everyone drawing Devil's Tower? It's because that's what they observed, and that's where we're kind of bringing it back with new technology that reinforces our observations, or at least creates doubt in the globe observations. Mark, how can you fight that?
Well, okay.
You can fight it because you're an educated man and science-based and all that.
The snootiness. I'm not even educated. I know based on my own observation and how light works, what I believe based on my own physical observations of the moon, which is
that's because you don't see it yet.
Well, yeah. Okay. Now the question is this, and we can end it on this.
Okay.
It's a serious question.
Yes.
What would it take for you to believe that the Earth is round and a globe?
Okay. Two things. One is expensive. One is not. The first thing, and we've been asking this forever because it doesn't exist in real life, which is get a 4K camera. They're cheap nowadays. Box of cereal, you probably get one. Put it on the side of a rocket that is leaving. In fact, the Elon Musk car would have been a great one to put on if he hadn't killed transmission right afterwards. But again, publicity stunt, whatever. Hashtag, I'm not buying it. Put a 4K rocket on the side of 4K camera on the side of a rocket. Send it out. Do not turn it off. Do not hit pause. Do not hit anything. Make sure you have a good transmitter on that thing, and watch the world curl underneath as it goes up. Make sure it's not on the first stage or second stage is one of their tricks. They always seem to put it on the second stage. It's like, oh, it's dropping off. Oh, we don't have any television transmission. And then let it go off. The Earth goes into a globe, turns into a ball, and goes away. And that's it. That's all we ever see. We never ever seen that. I would love to see it. It's never going to happen. It's too expensive.
Well, but Mark, I mean,
wait. No, that's the expensive one. The cheap one, which I tell people, I go, will this prove a flat Earth? No, but it'll get me a long way, which is get me an astronaut suit. Get me an astronaut suit. Get me in a vacuum chamber. There's big ones out there in universities. Put me in it. Throw the switch. Tell me how I don't die. In fact, you might want to put one of your science guys in another astronaut suit right next to it so I don't feel so bad going alone. Because there is no magic technology that exists in a space program that a spacesuit uses to combat the vacuum of space. It does not exist. It's just something they came up with, and they said, you know what? And I don't blame them. It was a brilliant move, which is, look up, if you ever get a chance, let me end on this, which is look up the old astronaut suit training programs where they were building the astronaut suits in the 50s. They were using plastics and metals because they had to. They knew there was a pressure problem. And then somebody came up with this brilliant idea. It's like, let's just shoot it with cloth. Let's just use a cloth suit. Nobody knows anything about physics. Nobody knows. It'll work. And it did. It worked. Nobody caught it. Nobody, to this day, nobody caught it. The astronaut, everyone's running around, fingers, dexterity. They're doing electronics. They're playing golf. They're building cars. Nobody has a problem at all with the vacuum. Sorry, that's how I'd prove it. Put me in a vacuum chamber.
See, and now I'll say the second one would not prove a round Earth. The first one, and we can probably...
First one would.
Well, the first one would, but I guarantee you that there would never be anyone who really believes in it that would.
No. We would. People are really good at Photoshop analyzing stuff. Opening with video editors, we tear apart images all the time, and we know it's. Well, I shouldn't say that. We would concede if it was genuine, but it is so. Look, the informational technology that's available to civilians now it rivals the military in a lot of cases. But if we saw it, it was like, yeah, we can't prove it. We can't prove it's not real. We'd concede. I would. I'd love to. I'd love to get away from this. I absolutely would, but I can't. I want to.
Well, now you've tempted me maybe to get some nice balloons and strap, but no, I can't strap my GoPro to it because it's got a fisheye lens. So
it wouldn't matter if you did. I've got footage from balloons. We got lots of footage from balloons that shows it flat at 120,000 feet. So that's not going to help you. It's got to be a rocket. And so who's got a rocket out there that they can shoot up? Elon did, but he's not even allowed to televise stuff anymore. I don't know why.
All right, Mark.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think the next follow-up to this, I might have. I live in the same district as a politician, Mark Garneau. I suspect you know who he is.
The former astronaut?
Yeah, Canadian astronaut. So he's actually, I think he's a politician of my district in Montreal. So I'm going to see if I can't now do a part 2, which would be maybe a live stream with him, and we'll see.
Yeah, you want the easy question to him if you want. I mean, I don't know if he'll answer it. There's
put the question to the internet right now. I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but put the question.
Just ask him about the spacesuit. Ask him how it works.
Okay. I will ask him about the spacesuit regardless, but that would not necessarily be conclusive evidence that the Earth is flat.
No, it's not. But I would ask him. It's just one of those things because law of thermodynamics. Sorry.
All right, Mark. The goal was not to convince the other, but the goal was certainly to understand each other. And I think I understand your thought process and I understand your explanations now.
Well, thank you.
It was fun.
Yeah,
right.
no, and thank you. Look, the questions, I don't know what the chat room was like. Thank you for the questions that were out there. I enjoyed it, and you were more than fair. And,
I wasn't here to ambush you. If you're ever on the East Coast, say hi, and if ever I'm on the West Coast, I'll ring you up.
Okay, sounds
All
good.
right.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys. Internet, have a good day.